They told us EVs were the future, that dealers would just adapt, that customers would fall in love with charging stations and software updates. But now, dealers across America are pushing back, not quietly, not in boardrooms, publicly, aggressively, and some are even quitting EVs altogether. This isn't some fringe rebellion, this is a full-blown revolt. Let me be crystal clear, dealers are done being the fall guys for broken promises, and it's not hard to see why. For years, automakers shoved electric vehicles into showrooms, promising the revolution was here. They spent billions on marketing, rolled out sleek concepts, and told the public, "This is what you want." But behind the scenes, dealers were drowning. EVs were piling up on lots. Buyers were confused. Test drives turned into Q&A sessions about chargers, apps, and range anxiety. Service departments had to retrain staff, stock new parts, and deal with angry customers whose batteries wouldn't charge in cold weather, all while profit margins disappeared. And then, the mandates hit. Suddenly, dealers weren't just expected to offer EVs, they were being told to prioritize them, to build new infrastructure, install chargers, invest hundreds of thousands of dollars for vehicles that barely moved. Some did it, most had no choice. But now they're saying enough. Just listen to what one major dealer group told Ford this year. "We've spent the money, we've trained the staff, and we're still stuck with EVs we can't sell." Another added, "You told us this was the future, but the customers never came." This isn't just frustration, it's a crisis, and automakers are finally starting to feel the pressure. In late 2024, a coalition of nearly 4,000 car dealers across the US sent an open letter to the Biden administration, pleading for a pause in EV mandates. They warned that the demand just isn't there, and forcing the issue will bankrupt retailers. Think about that. Thousands of businesses, from small-town family lots to massive metro dealers, all saying the same thing: this isn't working. And here's the scary part for the industry: they're right. EVs aren't selling the way they were supposed to. Inventory is stacking up. Interest rates are killing financing, and the average American buyer is walking away. So when dealers push back, it's not sabotage, it's survival. They're the ones who talk to customers every single day. They're the ones who have to explain why a $60,000 EV doesn't qualify for a tax credit. They're the ones who deal with the trade-ins, the complaints, and the walkouts. And now they're sounding the alarm. But is anyone listening? Let's talk numbers, because behind all the flashy headlines and press releases, the data tells a brutal truth. In 2021, EVs were on fire. The hype was real. Every automaker wanted a slice of the Tesla pie. Wall Street couldn't get enough of mobility, and politicians stood behind podiums promising zero-emission utopias by 2030. But then, reality showed up. By late 2023, the momentum had stalled. Ford admitted it was losing over $60,000 per EV sold. GM quietly delayed several of its EV rollouts. Hyundai and Kia started re-pivoting toward hybrids. Even Tesla began cutting prices to stimulate demand. Why? Because customers weren't buying. EV inventory, according to Cox Automotive, has been sitting on dealer lots for over 100 days, more than twice the national average for gas-powered cars. Let that sink in. These are supposed to be the most cutting-edge, in-demand vehicles, yet they're collecting dust. Dealers are stuck with models they can't move. Take the Ford Mustang Mach-E. It had its moment, but now, dealers are slashing prices just to generate foot traffic. Same with the F-150 Lightning. Early adopters showed up, then vanished. Now it's $80,000 worth of liability sitting under the sun. One dealer in the Midwest put it bluntly, "I've got 6 Lightnings on my lot. I can't give them away. People test drive them, ask about charging at home, then leave in a Silverado." And don't forget about the infrastructure problems. In rural areas, charging is still a joke. Even in major cities, broken chargers, long wait times, and incompatible networks are driving people insane. Not to mention the winter horror stories. EV range drops by 30% or more in cold climates. So guess who gets yelled at? Not Ford, not GM, not Washington. The dealer. They're the ones stuck explaining why a car that promises 300 miles suddenly needs a top-up after 190. They're the ones trying to explain kilowatt hours and charging speeds to people who just want to drive. And then there's the service problem. EVs may have fewer moving parts, but when something goes wrong, it's expensive. Battery replacements can run $15,000 or more, and many dealers still aren't fully equipped to handle EV repairs in-house. So they outsource, which means delays, angry customers, more lost trust. This isn't just a sales slump, it's a business model breakdown. And yet, automakers keep pushing more models onto the lots. More SUVs, more sedans, more crossovers, EV after EV, with no real buyers. One franchise owner in Florida said it best. "We didn't ask for this inventory. They just shipped it to us. Now we're discounting EVs by $10,000 just to stay afloat." That's not a future, that's a fire sale. And when the smoke clears, only one group will be left holding the bag. The dealers. "I've got 6 Lightnings on my lot. I can't give them away. People test drive them, ask about charging at home, then leave in a Silverado." And don't forget about the infrastructure problems. Let's not pretend this is just about supply and demand, because what's fueling the chaos isn't just bad sales, it's government pressure, cranked up to 11. In the last 5 years, EV mandates have gone from ambitious to outright aggressive. California wants 100% zero-emission vehicle sales by 2035. New York and Massachusetts are copying the plan. And on the federal level, the Biden administration's EPA is pushing a rule that would make 67% of all new vehicle sales electric by 2032. 2/3 of the market in just 7 years. And if you're wondering whether the average American is ready for that, spoiler alert, they're not. EV sales are stalling out at around 7 to 8% market share, and even that's heavily propped up by luxury buyers and early adopters. In rural areas, red states, and working-class communities, it's not just slow, it's dead on arrival. But that hasn't stopped the mandates, because to the people writing these rules, the transition isn't a suggestion. It's a crusade. And automakers, they caved. Instead of pushing back, they fell in line. Why? Because the subsidies are just too good to pass up. Billions in government loans, tax credits, and battery production grants, all tied to going electric. So what happens? Automakers overpromise. They announce electric SUV, electric trucks, electric everything. They build factories, they make press statements, they send EVs down the pipeline. And the dealers? They're the ones forced to clean up the mess. Dealers are being flooded with EV inventory they didn't order, that they can't sell, and that customers won't even test drive. And if that wasn't bad enough, manufacturers are punishing dealers who hesitate. Let's talk about Ford. In 2022, Ford rolled out its Model E certification program, and it was a disaster. Dealers were told they had to spend between $500,000 and $1.2 million on chargers, service upgrades, and training, or else they'd lose the right to sell electric Fords. No negotiation, no compromise. Pay up or get left behind. And what happened? Hundreds of Ford dealers across the country opted out. They said the math didn't work. They said the demand wasn't there. They said forcing them to invest millions into a market that's not moving was business suicide. One longtime dealer from Georgia said, "Ford wants us to spend like EVs are the iPhone." But they're not. These cars sit, they don't flip, they drain cash. And Ford wasn't alone. General Motors pulled the same stunt with Cadillac. They demanded that Cadillac dealers spend at least $200,000 to qualify for EV sales. The result? Over 150 dealers, more than 20% of Cadillac's entire US network, walked away from the brand completely. That's not pushback, that's mutiny. Imagine giving up a legacy luxury brand just to avoid being forced into a bad business decision. But that's where we are. Automakers are so obsessed with checking the green box for Washington that they're sacrificing their own partners. And here's the real kicker. Even when dealers comply, when they install the chargers, train the staff, buy the parts, do everything by the book, the cars still don't move. Why?
Because the average buyer still isn't convinced. They're worried about range. They're confused by charging. They don't trust battery tech. And when you tell them the $7,500 tax credit depends on income levels, final assembly location, battery sourcing, IRS compliance, and whether the moon is in retrograde,
they walk. And the poor salesperson is left there, smiling awkwardly, watching another lost lead walk out the door.
But the automakers don't care. They met the mandate, they got their subsidy, and they leave the dealer with a product they can't move. It's madness.
This isn't just an industry undergoing change. This is an industry cannibalizing its own distribution network. And it's happening in real time. Every EV mandate passed without market readiness, every factory retooled without demand, every corporate ESG checkbox ticked without dealer input, is one more crack in the foundation. And when that foundation breaks, it won't be the automakers or the politicians who pay the price. It'll be the dealers. Again, something's changed. For years, dealers kept quiet. They adapted. They nodded politely when executives told them, the future is electric. They smiled for the photo ops, installed the chargers, attended the training. But now they're done pretending. From Texas to Michigan, from Florida to Pennsylvania, dealers are speaking up. They're saying what the industry has been too scared to admit. This isn't working. And they're not just complaining, they're organizing. In late 2023, a coalition of nearly 4,000 dealers signed a public letter to the White House, urging the administration to slow down the EV mandate push. Let that number sink in. 4,000. Not fringe independents, not fly-by-night shops. These were major franchise holders representing billions in revenue. The message was clear. We're the ones on the ground. We know what customers want, and right now, they're not asking for EVs. And they're right. Poll after poll shows the same thing. Americans are curious about EVs, but they're not ready to commit. Only a small slice of the market is genuinely ready to go all electric. And yet, dealers are being told to bet the house on a market that isn't real yet. It's like building a 5-star hotel in the middle of a desert, and then being blamed when nobody checks in. Some are saying, enough is enough. They're cutting EV allocations. They're focusing on hybrids, the one segment customers actually want. And they're demanding manufacturers give them more freedom to tailor inventory to local demand. Because here's the reality, EVs might be the future, but today, they're a niche. And forcing a niche product onto every showroom floor in America isn't progress, it's lunacy. And let's talk about the elephant in the room, Tesla. While legacy dealers drown in unsold inventory and impossible mandates, Tesla gets to operate outside the system. They sell direct to consumer, no dealerships, no middlemen. They control pricing, marketing, delivery, everything. It's not a level playing field. Legacy dealers are being crushed under the weight of regulations, rules, and inventory mandates, while Tesla moves vehicles with a single app notification. It's no wonder morale is collapsing inside dealership networks. The people who built the car business in America, the small-town dealer, the family-run franchise, the guy who's been selling Fords or Chevys for 30 years, they're now being treated like obstacles. But they're not the problem. They're the only ones telling the truth. They're the ones warning that the emperor has no clothes. And if the manufacturers, the media, and the government won't listen, they'll walk. Some already are. More will follow. And when that happens, the entire EV narrative, the one built on glossy ads and political slogans, might finally collide with reality. Because here's the truth, you can't force a revolution, not from the top down, not with mandates, not with press releases. Not when the customers aren't ready, the infrastructure's not built, and the economics don't work. And especially not when the people tasked with selling the dream are waking up from the nightmare.